Success is not a good teacher. Failure makes you humble. Shah Rukh Khan. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I'm your host, Shamisa Ali. Our topic tonight is the Private Sector Commissioner's views on the 2025 budget. The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, UK, Canada, the Caribbean, and Guyana. Funding support is by well known philanthropist Dave Narayan from Dave West Indian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight, Dr. Tara Singh.
Thank you very much, Shamisa, and welcome to our listeners.
Good evening, Dr. Tara. Our panelist tonight is Dr. Ganga Ramdas.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
Good
Our
evening.
guest tonight is the chairman of the Private Sector Commission and the CEO of Gaico Construction. Please welcome Mr. Komal Singh.
Hello, good evening,
Good
everyone.
evening. Welcome, everyone. Dr. Tara, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Shamisa, and welcome, Dr. Ganga,
Hello.
Shamisa, and our distinguished guest this evening is Mr. Komal Singh. He's a chairman of the Private Sector Commission of Guyana, as well as the CEO of Gaico Construction, and he's a great humanitarian as well. So we want to thank him for that. Mr. Komal Singh, before I start, I saw a report in yesterday's press that you and the Private Sector Commission, some of the executive members, met with the president to present a proposal on a revision of the local content law. You want to make a few remarks about that, why you think is important at this stage in the country's development?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Tara. Yes, yesterday we had the opportunity after a 2-year continuous review of the legislation that was put in place for local content. And we recognized over the last 2 years that the capacity over the last 2 years within the private sector and the business community in Guyana have increased significantly. As a result, we thought it wise to look at what was in place with the original legislation and make some recommendation to add some additional information items into those into that document, and also to increase the percentage that we have seen where capacity was built over the last 2 years. I must say, over the last 2 years, the private sector have benefited significantly from foreign companies coming and partnering with local companies to help build capacity locally. Our intention is to have that continue because the rate at which the market is going at the moment, the skill set and the technical expertise that is so badly needed, we don't have it. As a result of that, creating consortium and partnership is critical to the development and the growth of our people, our businesses, and our country and economy at large. And I think the international partners played a critical role in this. As such, we thought it wise to review that document, foreign companies from working with local companies in Guyana, but is intended to create more consortium or partnership, bringing more expertise into the market to help develop our capacity building locally.
Well, I noticed in the Minister of Finance in his budget speech said that local content has brought already about 1.5 billion US into the local economy and employ about 1,100 vendors. Are those figures in sync with what the private sector have, or you have a greater figure than those?
No, that number is pretty much accurate. And, like I said, we must commend also Exxon, who plays a very important role in making sure that our local companies build capacity to meet the demand of the oil and gas sector. And so far, we have seen tremendous support coming out from Exxon and the entire oil and gas sector for the foreign companies as it relates to supporting the locals. We expect that to continue, and our relationship with local and those foreign companies will continue. But the number and the benefit that we have seen within the economy so far is very significant. A lot of the services that used to be offered outside of Guyana to support the oil and gas sector, many of those services now are being offered and supported right out of Guyana. And I think that has shown the amount of improvement and capacity that was built over the last 2 years. And I think Dr. Ashley's saying numbers is pretty reasonable and accurate when it comes to those to the benefit that we have seen so far.
Okay. Just one quick question before we move away from this, because we got so many other issues to talk about. You mentioned about developing capacity and skill set, etc. What's the current situation with technical skills, manpower requirements to service the development of the country?
Well, like I said, we still, because of the massive expansion and growth that is taking place in our country, we still have not enough skills to meet the demand. But what we have seen over the last 3 or 4 years, the initiative that government have also put out, in addition to government, many private sector businesses have started up business where they're offering training in some of those specialized areas to help meet the demand. And I think if we continue on that path of development and training for unskilled workers, within the next 2 or 3 years, we can see significant improvement in terms of the amount of manpower resource that we have, or skilled manpower resource, to satisfy our needs and demand locally.
What about just to get at a personal level, your Geico Construction? How is your skill set? What's the picture of that right now?
The demand for engineer, health and safety workers in this country right now is very high. At Geico, we have not yet have any significant impact on the skill side of workers. We have been taking university students who are in their second year at university engineering, and offer them work because they need to do at least a year or 6 months in an environment where it's in their field of work. And we have been offering that to many of the young students, and we have seen significant benefit because we are able to retain those employees after they would have completed their degree program at the University of Guyana. And I think if all of us do that, we encourage those students who are qualifying themselves and offer more retainers for them to stay in Guyana rather than when they finish qualified, they move out because they would have already worked into the sector. They understand the benefits and they understand the reward that they can get from the sector. And I think we have seen significant benefit by doing that, and we will continue to do it.
All right, thank you. Just want other issue I want to touch a different issue before I pass you on to Dr. Gang. I know our main topic is to discuss how the private sector view the current budget, but there's another report in I think it's either today's press or yesterday where the private sector commission on FITUG, the Federation of Independent Trade Unions, wrote to GCOM supporting them on their position with biometrics. And this particular was saying they don't understand how you all can agree to that, the PSC. You care to comment on that?
Look, the current system that is enshrined in the Constitution at GCOM has been in use for the longest while in this country. Political parties from all sides of the aisle have used it. They have commented of it. They were very comfortable with it. And we all know that the system is very robust. We don't feel at this point in time, based on all the information that we have and based on the system and the policies that we have seen written from GCOM, we don't feel that there's need at this point in time to bring biometrics into the picture, simply because somebody wants it to happen for whatever reason. What is currently enshrined in the Constitution at GCOM is very robust in our view. I find it very difficult for anyone to say that someone who is not registered can vote at any polling station. When you have all the polling agents, you have all the representatives from each political party sitting at those locations. All right. In addition to that, you have other observers there. It's difficult for someone to go there and vote if their name is not on the list. And because of those information and those guidelines that are already enshrined in the Constitution, we have agreed internally, based on what we have reviewed, unless somebody can prove us wrong, that we support GCOM's position at this point in time. There is no need for biometrics at this point in time. There is some level of biometrics because there is continuous registration being done. So there is a system where you already have some of that in the system. Additionally, the Constitution at this point in time does not mandate GCOM to accept biometrics. So if somebody shows up at a polling station and they decide they don't want to use their fingerprint at this point in time, you cannot disenfranchise that individual or say to them they cannot vote because it's not in the law at this point in time. And like GCOM have said, if they go to biometrics at this point in time, what it will do, it will create a set of confusion because you need adequate time to make sure that whatever you're doing, if you're going to change or add any layer to the existing system, you need to make sure, and I guess every single political party will agree, you need to make sure there is adequate time to make sure that those changes does not disenfranchise anyone. Make sure that it is very robust. It cannot be tampered with easily. And as such, doing that at this point in time, it is not prudent in our view. And we share the view of the commission. It's not prudent at this point in time to do it now, knowing that election is just ahead of us. So for that,
Yeah.
we agree that we will support it.
Yeah.
We agree. All right.
Well, your point about the polling station, the procedures laid on there are very robust. That was confirmed in a video conversation with the ex or the former CEO, Mr. Lowenfield, where he said categorically it's almost impossible to impersonate or any illegality at the polling station. He was speaking, I don't know if you saw the video, and you had the chairman of GCOM, the former chairman, Mr. Suraj Bali, was there. And he said, I guess that's the reason why they had to try to manipulate the tabulation when they tried to steal the election. They couldn't do it at the polling station, so they tried to do it at the tabulation centers in Georgetown. So the thing is, whenever there is irregularity, massive irregularity in polling, it's not at the polling station, it's elsewhere. Either they steal the box or they get the army to count it, etc. So
That's correct. And Doc, if every single polling station count their ballots, and at the end of when they close ballots, they post up that statement of poll at each polling station, and everybody can take those statements of poll information and tabulate it themselves. That's the
mhm,
facts of the election and what transpired for the day. All right.
yeah,
And that is where all the transparency is, right at those polling stations. So
mhm,
we need to make sure that everything is going right at the polling station. The
mhm,
statement of polls are publicly posted at the end of every single day. All the documentation that needs to be in the box is properly accounted for in the box. And if we follow those simple procedures that is outlined in GCOM system,
mhm,
there's no way anybody can actually do anything to tamper with the
mhm.
election process.
Yeah.
Right?
All right. Thank you. Now, let's go back to our main topic now. I know those are have some connection to do with the budget, but our topic tonight is a review. We would like to have the private sector commission to give their views on the budget. We hear politicians and writers and various people advance their views. What is right about the budget? What is wrong? What else could be done, etc. Now I pass you over to Dr. Ganga Ramdas. Dr. Ganga, over to
Thank
you.
you, Dr. Tara. Um, So far, the rapid development that we have in Guyana is indeed a development challenge. And I'm pleased to hear about the training initiatives in the private sector as well as in the government sector. The private sector can do a lot more in terms of their expansion and in-house training, as you have mentioned. So we have labor, we have land, and we have capital. So labor, we're on a growth path with that as well. Land development is essential in order to have a broad-based development initiative cutting across the non-oil sectors. So we have the oil and the non-oil sectors. So labor, land, and capital. So I'm also pleased to learn of your initiative with the president to augment capital through partnerships. So that's very commendable. The one that's missing there is uh, local entrepreneurship. So we need to keep that in mind as well. Now, I've been trying to correlate the the three areas: labor, land, capital, with the government initiatives. So, in other words, I'm trying to assess the role of the private sector and the size of the private sector and the determinants on what fuels their growth. So, one important one is the partnership you just mentioned, but there is the other one, which is obvious, that flows through the government budget and government contracts. So, I wonder if you can s- tell us a little bit more about the role of the private sector and the essential role of government contracts. Now, I identified government contracts because I looked at the budget and I found the role of taxes will diminish in 2025. The percentages are 35% in 2024 and 31% in 2025. So that's tax revenue to government total expenditure. So that decline needs to be explained in terms of the development initiatives um, that flows through government contracts. Your partnership initiatives are clear. We just have to identify the areas like the sectors. We know shore base is one of those. So, can you expand on the role of the government contracts in helping or advancing the private sector?
Look, thank you, Doc. I'll speak a little bit on contracts. I mean, you say contracts, but I'll talk about that in a little more broader context rather than being very specific. Um, yes, the budget as it relates on infrastructure development, if that's exactly where you're focusing on, um, there are many sectors and there's many segments within those budgets areas. If you looked at it very closely, where the private sector will benefit from significantly. What we have recognized in the budget from an overall, from a general perspective, is that the budget is one that allows the private sector and the country at large to have a continuity of what was happening from 2024 and prior to 2024. If you recognize the budget in each one of the area, you will also notice that whatever programs were in place to achieve our 2030 vision that was outlined by His Excellency a year or two ago, all of those programs have been actually rolled into 2025 budget with a view for those areas to see continuity. And I'll go into some specific areas. The agriculture sector, for example. The agriculture sector, there is this big position as it relates to reducing our food import bill by 25%. Guyana has continued to show significant transformation in our agri sector by opening up massive agriculture sector in soya, corn, black bean, rice, red beans recently. Those will add significant value to the private sector and to our economy at large. It will find ourselves as being able to export that product. Inside of the infrastructure, there's lots of talk around why are we putting so much money into infrastructure development. But let me say it from a private sector position and from an investor standpoint. If a country is to grow, then we must make sure that the infrastructure is in place. If those infrastructure are not in place, then we'll have stagnation in the manufacturing sector, in the mining sector, in transportation, moving our people around the country. So while we're growing, it is very heartening to see that while the economy is growing and the country is growing, government have continued over the last couple of years, and we see it in 2025 budget again, continue to pay keen attention on strategic infrastructure development. And those infrastructure development will continue to allow the private sector to find areas of opportunities to continue to develop in a manner where we'll be in a position to develop our economy to grow all our sector. If you look at 2024 and the projection for 2025, all our sector in 2024 have showed significant growth improvements. And those growth is continued into the 2025 budget also. Over the last 4 years, private sector investment in this country outside of the major oil and gas investment exceed 2.5 billion US dollar. And that shows the enormous amount of confidence that the business community, and not just local businesses, foreign businesses, have in the economy in Guyana. So coming to Guyana, work with locals, partner with locals to help develop some of those areas that is so badly needed. And we are very confident going forward that the investment from private sector will continue way beyond that 2.5 billion. Private sector has been very committed to the growth and development, and private sector is very happy to see that the government also is creating an enabling environment for the private sector to grow, to create sustainable employment, to create sustainable growth in the various sector also, not just for ourselves, but for the region, right? Most of our investment that we're looking at right now, targeting not just Guyana, but the region. The Latam highway that the government is currently building, that highway is very critical for the growth and development of Guyana. Guyana will become a hub for North America. Northern Brazil will be utilizing that roadway in a very, very big way. But guess what? If we build a road and we don't have a deep water port, we're back to square one. We're going to be having still shallow draft vessels coming here, collecting small amounts of cargo. So we will definitely need to make sure that the deep water port is developed as quickly as possible. So by the time the road is completed, we have a deep water port to support the traffic that will be coming from Brazil to meet the North American market. Thank you.
Yeah, I just have a general comment, and then we can address that. The purpose for the infrastructure, besides the commercial aspects, should also be cost lowering. I had once written about that. The essential purpose of especially public transportation should help lower the costs of employees going to work from home to work and so forth. And of course, we have congestion costs to overcome. So the cost lowering aspect is very essential. We should be mindful of that and be mindful of public transportation development. And I think that's an area that the private sector can form a partnership with some form in order to assist with the cost lowering of the employees. They all don't have to buy a car to get to work. So that, I think that's very essential. And the highways and the purposes must be well defined in terms of opportunities to those who will be working, not just those who will be moving goods and services, right? So the house, in other words, the household sector. We have government sector, we have business sector, which you handle admirably, and then we have the household sector because we have to reflow incomes to the household in order to sustain the economy. So if they don't spend, then we will have a problem. Okay, so I'll like
And
your
Doc, you're spot on that there. The household is critical. Lowering cost of transportation is also very important. And it is for that reason why government needs to rapidly, and which they're doing, put the necessary infrastructure in place to help lower some of those costs. When you look at the Damar Harbor Bridge right now as a classical example, you have almost 10,000 vehicles commuting that bridge at an average per day. And if each one of those vehicles have about 5 passengers inside, they're losing at least 3 to 4 hours, man hours daily. And if you convert the man hour to a dollar value, you'll be amazed to see where the number is. Now, when that new harbor bridge comes into stream, and that new harbor bridge is going to land into a 4 lane that's going to just move the traffic freely to the respective location, it will automatically have an impact on the cost of movement for household. All right. So I like the point you raised, and I think when you looked at what is happening, it is targeting that exactly what you're talking about to help lower the cost. Now, yes, public transportation is an excellent idea, but we need to make sure we have the necessary infrastructure in place. With a
yeah.
congested road that we have right now, we can't bring a big 50-seater bus and put it on the road. It's going to block the entire traffic on the road. But down the line, as we keep developing and have these highway in place, definitely that is a very, very good initiative that will need to be looked at. And I guess, the private sector will be more than happy to look into that also.
Yes, just an additional comment. I had written a proposal once as a summer transportation director in the US, and one
Mhm.
of those was park and ride. So you could create before the bridge, they could park their cars there and use a bus transport to get to the other side, and then you can work that out. But park
Yep.
and ride helps a lot to lower costs on both sides of the bridge and in other areas.
And make you healthier to doc.
Yeah. So I let Dr. Tarasi continue, and then I will ask about the new items, the non-tax sources of revenue, because I think those are the line items in the budget where we can track the new developments that are taking place, especially in things like the 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 new island that we have there and the facilities and so on. These are new initiatives but in the private sector. So we need to look at the value added and how that translates into budgetary line items. And the place I was looking at are the non taxes items in the revenue stream for government. So we can deal with that later after Dr. Tarasi.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Ganga. Now, I watched segments of the budget debate. People put forward their views, etc. But I don't think I saw anyone mentioning or discussing what are the various sources of revenue that will fund the 2025 budget. Now, that would have been a very good discussion because you get money from tax revenue, rentals, income tax, etc. You get from grants, carbon credits, um, you get loans which will help to fund, or and I mentioned grants already.
Hmm.
Now, the some people get the idea that all the infrastructure projects are being funded with oil revenues. That is not correct, or the budget. In last year, 28% of our revenues go to fund the budget, 28% of the budget. This year is projected at 37%. So, do you want to comment on that? Because I didn't see any one of the MPs try to uh, get to say what determines what proportion of money is spent on how the government, first of all, gets its money to fund the budget, the expenditures. They only talk about, oh, we need to do this, that. So go ahead.
All right. I don't have the detailed number, Doc, but I'll just give you a general overview of our
Yeah.
position. There's a perception that government is using all the oil revenue to fund this budget. And we all agree, you just talked about it. That is not the case. All right. We have almost every other sector. If all of these sectors we're seeing significant growth rate, definitely they're generating revenue from each one of those sectors. All right. We've seen a little bit of slowdown in the mining sector, but based on the initiative that we have seen government implementing on geology and mines in all of the areas, they will definitely see significant improvement come 2025. Those are significant revenue stream that is coming into government. In terms of tax stream, definitely, if the private sector has shown 2.5 billion investment over the last few years, definitely private sector growth have increased significantly. The tax generated from the private sector is significantly a big contributor also to government revenue at this point in time. As the economy continues to grow, revenue generated within the private sector will definitely help to improve the revenue that the government is generating from taxation. Right? Um, so I think it is a topic that needs to be discussed publicly in full detail. And I think we need to look at that maybe on a separate program where we go into the specific details in terms of how each one of the sector, if we say they contribute 5-10%, we can dive in a little bit deeper to understand what is happening in those sectors, to understand also if anything external that happen will affect the sector, and if it affect the sector, how it will affect the revenue. And I'll speak to one, for example. Currently, oil prices on the world market is between maybe $80 to $90 a barrel. If oil prices obviously sink significantly, then obviously if you target your budget or you set your budget based on a significant amount of oil revenue and there's a drop in oil prices internationally, it will definitely have a dent. And that is why government was very strategic, and we must commend Dr. Ashish Singh and his team for making sure that the budget don't depend heavily on the oil and gas revenue, because as you will aware, oil and gas prices in the world market is very volatile. It can be high today and tomorrow morning it can go right down. We've seen it in the past. So historically, there is a trend where oil prices can go up and down rapidly. And for that reason, the budget that was set by using a small amount of oil revenue to satisfy the overall need, it is very commendable. So that if there's an impact on oil prices on the world market, it doesn't affect our budget significantly.
Yeah, well, for this week, the average oil price, Brent crude, was about $73 per barrel. And okay, let's move on to. I just mentioned when I mentioned sources of revenue to fund the budget. Of course, we'll have import duties, excise tax, etc. So, as I said, we need a special program, but at least at a broad level, consumers or the public should know from where they're getting this money and what proportion to fund the budget. And secondly, I think was a point that Dr. Ganga raised. After a while, probably in 2026, 27, the expenditure, the capital expenditure is not likely to remain high because most of the key projects, they're injecting money right now. And after a while, when those projects are finished, you just have to get money to maintain them, operational costs. So the price for the capital part of the budget is likely to decline unless they can think about any other. But I can't see that we will be significant. What are your views on that?
No, and you're perfect right. I mean, it's the way economics operates. When you're in the investment and development stage, you will see a high capital investment cost. But as you complete those capital investments and those investments start generating revenue, and you already reach a position where you don't need to invest heavily on capital investments or capital projects, then obviously you will see a significant reduction. You will flatten at some point in time. Right now, we're seeing capital works keep rising, but in a couple of years from now, everything will flatten, and all that will happen at that point in time, you will end up on a flat position, and maintenance and services will become critical, and that is why it's so important that we make sure that while we are growing, we make sure that we're growing industries and businesses that will help support the oil and gas and the entire economy, to make sure that we have the proper services to maintain all of those equipment and capital infrastructure that we're putting in place. It don't make sense we built out and spend millions of dollars today on capital works, and tomorrow when we finish, we don't have a proper maintenance program in place. And that is what is going to be very important going forward. So you will definitely see a reduction in capital costs, but then you will start seeing now an increase in maintenance costs going forward in very small quantities as it keep going up. As the assets and the capital become older, obviously maintenance costs will continue to rise a little bit. But definitely the curve will flatten at some point in time.
Another important thing which I think that Parliament in the debate, I haven't heard anybody, maybe you can correct me, but from the bits and pieces I watch, I read the papers every day. I didn't see any MP from both sides talking about waste management is such a, and recycling is such important in the modern economy. I haven't heard any of them try to address those things, waste management and recycling. So
Well,
if you can
let me
comment on that.
definitely let me speak on that, and that's very important point because, like I've said many times before, and I'll continue to say this, that investment that we're seeing right now that have been undertaken by government is very strategic. It caters for our biodiversity, it caters for the environment, it caters for our people, it caters for private sector, etc. But if we don't have proper waste management facilities in place, obviously at some point in time we'll have some issues. Now let me bring you up to speed with some of the waste management facilities that exist in this country at this point in time. Currently, on all the hazardous waste that is coming from the oil and gas sector, there's two waste management company right now that process all these hazardous waste. I happens to be part owner of one of that company. All right. We actually reclaim all the base oil, 100% of the base oil. We don't burn it, and it's being reused. And that's a significant achievement for Guyana and the waste management sector in this country. All right. And thanks to Exxon to making sure that, that facility was put in place to make sure that we recover all the base oil. So instead of burning it, it's been recovered 100% and reused back into the facilities then. Outside of that, there are many other waste management facilities that are currently being set up to do recycling in small scale, to to shred all of the plastics and make them into pellets and put it through an extruder and maybe put it into some construction material. All of those are still in the works. The one that needs to get some work, which I know for sure is being looked at, is the Haguar site. They're doing a pretty good job under the circumstance at this point in time. But one of the things we need to call on all Guyanese for right now, we need to start thinking about waste separation. We can't move to a recycling of waste if we don't change the culture whereby people recycle waste, separate waste at the point of disposal. You will agree in the US and all the parts in North America and many other parts in the world, you have to separate your waste.
Mm,
That is not happening currently. So there is a program that will be coming shortly and stream here where the private sector and the government, we will try to get government involved in that, and I'm sure we'll get them buying to that. If we can start getting in school, having different color bins in school where they will start thinking about waste separation, the recycling will come. But if it comes now, it is going to become a very costly recycling. And as such, you will not be able to sell back the byproduct of those recycled stuff. So we need to change the culture. And it's a culture that I think, is not difficult to change. It just needs to be gradual. But right now, there's many,
mm,
many, about at least 5 or 6 different waste management facilities in this country that is dealing with
mm,
especially the hazardous waste that is coming off from the oil and gas sector. And I
mm.
can sit here confidently and say to you, the hazardous waste that is coming out from the oil and gas sector is properly managed in this country. And Guyana,
Okay.
actually, we have one of the best facility in the region when it comes to dealing with the hazardous waste that is coming off the
Okay.
oil and gas sector.
Thank you. I also was expressed some concern over the number of vehicles that are being condemned and dumped by the roadside. Or is there any plan to how you get rid of these? Imagine thousands of vehicles will be dumped on roadside or parks or unoccupied lands. So, what is the government has any plan to deal with that
So
as
Doc,
part of
yes,
the?
good question, and I'm happy to say here that government started a program across the country right now, where they're removing any wreck old vehicle you have parked on the road, and they're taking it to a special location where they're going to be crushing it, all right, for further disposal and recycling. All right. So that
Yeah.
program is ongoing, and if you go around the country right, you'll see they continuously keep going around removing people. There's still a lot more to do, but the program is ongoing right now as we speak.
Mm. All right. Thank you, Dr. Ganga.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on the point you mentioned about the role of the NRF, the National Resource Fund. In 2024, it funded 51% of capital expenditures. In 2025, it's expected to fund 69.5% of capital expenditures. So the NRF doesn't fund 100% of capital expenditures, which essentially would be infrastructural works. At the same time, since we're going to use more of the NRF, it's consistent with the role of taxes in the economy, which I had mentioned before, would move from 35% to 31%. So that is consistent. This brings us to the point where we need to look at the role of the private sector in contributing to the non tax revenue stream, and there are line items in the budget. I've been trying to identify businesses and projects or sectors where these sources are coming from. For example, you have rent royalties and land development, and there are some numbers there. Then you also have dividends and transfers. So I've been trying to make some sense. The two together gives us less than 2%, 1.7% in 24 and 1.9% in 2025. So the non-tax revenue in these two categories, rent royalties and land development, and dividend transfers. I would like some more light to be shed on that. What type of businesses and so on that contribute to the non-tax revenue, which would be an essential role of the private sector.
So Doc, you asked me a question here where I don't have the answer in detail. I need to look back at the detail line items to analyze that. But generally speaking, the non tax revenues, definitely the private sector will have to play a role in terms of developing themselves and playing a critical role in making sure that that revenue continues to rise from the private sector. I think when you talk about royalties, I'm not sure if that's part of the royalties that is coming from the oil and gas sector, right?
No,
But like you
that's
said,
already
right.
internalized in the and national resource funds. That's already calculated there. That's not the royalty. It's a different. It might be other mining, quarrying,
Yeah, it can be in the
and so
mining
on.
sector where they're required to
Well,
pay royalties.
Non-oil.
right. So the only area that will have a lot of royalty right will be coming out from the mining sector, the bauxite, the gold and diamond sector. And we have seen significant growth in those areas right now. So as those continue to grow, definitely we will see increase in royalty. We've seen OMI coming back into the market also. With OMI coming back into the market and starting production, that will also significantly contribute to these numbers that we're looking at here for 2025.
Yeah,
Has
I also you also have dividends and transfers. I was kind of surprised that it appeared in the budget. So, do you have any information on the source of the dividends and transfers?
Not at this point in time, Doc. No.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't have any more questions in this area because I was trying to link up projects and sectors with the budget line items. So you have the tax. We have some understandings on the role of taxes and also an expectation of the role of the non-tax revenue outside of mining. We have to be mindful of that. So the joint ventures that you talked about, are those the shore bases, essentially the joint ventures? You mentioned the recycling. That's excellent. So is that part of the partnership joint ventures, or that's an independent domestic corporation uh, activity there? Is that
No,
business?
most of these waste management facility, and this is as a result, like I said again, another classical example of the benefits of the Local Content Act. Um, the waste management facility that I just alluded to, one of them, um, have partnership. You know, we have a partner out of Finland. Ourselves and Gisby come together as one big consortium, and we created that joint venture, and we offering that service right into the oil and gas sector. Um, but like I said, the partnership and consortium, you see the benefit also already. Vichy open up a massive shore base on the West Lemran Region 3. That shore base will create a significant amount of opportunity. It also creates an environment where the community, the value of those property in the community have increased significantly as a result of that investment. Those communities that had nothing to do with the investment, but because of the investment that is done within that community, it automatically increased the property prices for those houses that is in the surrounding area. Those are some of the spin-off benefits you're seeing from some of these investments. In addition to that, it will create a job opportunities for over 200 workers, which will be pulled from right within that community at Vredenhoek Region 3 location. So these partnership, if we didn't have partnership, we would not have been able to jump onto these mega projects that we're seeing happening in Guyana. And that is the benefit of these partnerships. Those are some of the benefits that arise out of the Local Content Act to allow those foreign companies to partner with local companies to
Right.
help develop those projects.
Okay, Dr. Ganga, your last point.
Well, I think I covered most of the things I wanted to say, but I'm very interested in seeing public transportation being developed
Mm,
because that would help the household sector directly.
okay, all right. I know we are coming to the end of our
Wow.
program, but this is a vast topic. We only touched the surface there. There's so many other issues to discuss with the budget. So I guess we have to get you back another time. But Shamisa, do you have any questions for
We
Mr.
do have questions, Dr.
Okay,
Tara.
go ahead. Go ahead.
So the first question comes from Mr. Rajendra Singh, and he says, do you support the renegotiation of the oil and gas contract with Exxon at this time or in the future?
Okay. Now, one of the things we need to understand, if you don't appreciate and respect the sanctity of contracts, then any one of us as an investor will obviously have question as it relates to investment. The contract that we have currently with Exxon, no, I do not support at this point in time for any renegotiation simply because it's not catering for it. If both party agrees mutually to have a renegotiation, it's all well and good. It's all better if you can have mutual understanding to go forward with negotiation. And if those negotiations are acceptable by both parties, then yes. But if you're asking me if government should boldly push the operator to go into renegotiation, my answer to that is no. Government should not use no strong arm where that is concerned. And I'm very happy to see that governments have respected the sanctity of contracts. And as a result of that, we continue to see more and more FDIs coming into Guyana because companies internationally recognize that they can come into Guyana and they can invest comfortably without worrying that tomorrow morning, if there's a change in government, government will go and change those contracts. And I think we need to look beyond the future, not just today. And it's for that reason, for us, we will say we support the government position not to push a renegotiation at this point in time using a strong arm position. But if both parties agree, definitely.
Well said. This is more of a suggestion, and it's from Ramona Karim. She says there is a very wide gap between the skilled workers and the workers who label themselves contractors. The government should establish much more skilled training. The training must be imported, and the trainees must not be sent abroad as they will not return again. We will not go through a brain drain situation.
Well, excellent suggestion, and I share that view. In the past, we have seen significant brain drain in our country. Many companies right now, and I can say it throughout the private sector. In the old days, we used to get an opportunity to go overseas to do training, and then all is happening is one or two people is exposed to those training. Right now, what is happening, you see in the reverse. You're seeing we bring in the trainer so we can train more people locally. And that is also helping to build the capacity within our local community. And that is where some of these consortium and partnerships comes into play. Because many of those companies now are partnering with local companies to offer training. Right now, I can tell you, in Guyana, we have over maybe 15 or 20 different private businesses that is offering training in almost every single area that is needed in this country.
Thank you. And Mr. Rajendra Singh also added what is needed for the next elections is enhanced security in and around the places of voting.
I share his view 100%.
Yeah.
The people who are there, the observers, the political party representative, everybody must feel comfortable that they're there and they can observe the election without fear that somebody is gonna hurt them or something. So yes, I agree. Security is a big issue at those election polling stations.
We have Mr. Sohan Sivcharan that says the cost of living in Guyana is too high for the wages and salaries paid to people. How can you lower housing, transportation, food, and medical costs in Guyana?
You know, I'll speak general on cost of living. Cost of living in Guyana, yes, it went up, but we also need to understand that we also have a lifestyle change. And we need to also change our work ethics and our work habits if we're going to accept and want to have a lifestyle change. It is very heartening and it's very nice to see that many, many Guyanese are now able to own their own car, own their own home, instead of buying from, say, Stabrook Market, they now go to a supermarket where they pay higher prices, etc. It is excellent to see that those persons are improving their life. Guyana now have an opportunity where any person can do two jobs per day. They can do their day job and they can go and do a 3, 4 hour work in the afternoon to help support some of those lifestyle change. And let's don't forget, the government went into this 2025 budget and offer an incentive, a tax-free incentive there, that anyone who works overtime, $50,000 is tax-free. That's an incentive for them to work without worrying that they're going to work overtime and they now have to pay tax. If those same persons left Guyana on a flight to New York within 8 hours, they will understand that change that we're begging them to have in Guyana. They will go out there, they will enjoy everything, and they're willing to do 2, 3 jobs to satisfy that lifestyle change that they're looking for. In a growing economy right now, and what is happening around the world, the government have done significant amount of fiscal measure to keep prices down. We just heard in the U.S. a new government was just put in place there, and you heard President Trump is saying that he needs to bring those prices down. Where do you think we import our stuff in Guyana? We bring stuff from the US and many parts of the world. So if those prices are high, automatically when it gets here, it will be high. Government have removed a lot of duties and taxes from many, many household items to help cushion those costs. But if the cost is high overseas, which we have absolutely no control over, definitely there's no way that we're gonna be able to bring those down right down. But like I said, there's so much opportunity in the market where people can earn more. And let me just touch quickly. Nobody in Guyana right now works for 3,000 or 4,000 Guyana dollars per day. If you don't pay a labor in the construction sector $7,000 and $8,000 per day, you cannot get them to work. Anything between $6,000 to $8,000 is the minimum you can pay a laborer who have zero skill in country. Do the math and you will see how much money a laborer can earn in Guyana.
Thank you. Sohan also said, what would be the side effects of giving people too much of free money in the form of cash grants? These short term benefits will only last for a short time. This money should have been spent to train and retrain people to work in various industries.
Government is already spending significant amount of money on training. Look at the gold program, for example. Thousands of people they're training. Government also spending significant amounts of money to train nurses currently. Government will be sending a set of people to train in the hospitality sector in Barbados. So it's not like they're giving away those little cash grants and they're ignoring spending money on training. Those cash grants that is being given away, and if you look at it, if it was happening on a monthly basis, then yes, we would have an issue with it. But governments have been very careful in how they're giving out those cash grants. And many of those people are using those cash grants right now to maybe go and make a pay down on a car, for example. In my company, I had almost 3 employees this same year come and they're going and use that money to start, to earn themselves a car for themselves. So they're using those money not just for spending on day-to-day items. They're using the money to invest in something tangible. It might look small, but $100,000 when you add it up to all the number of persons, it's a lot of money being injected into the economy. It will have a rippling effect, even if they go and spend it at stores and malls around the country.
Great, thank you. I'm happy to hear that people will be sent abroad for hospitality training. That is needed in Guyana. So thank you for letting
Definitely.
us know about that. Mr. Lal says, isn't it time Guyana starts to incorporate trains and railways as measures to relieve the transportation needs for people and goods?
The answer to that is yes. The rails and stuff is being looked at, but like I said, we need to put some basic infrastructure in place before we can transcend to those higher level.
Thank
If you look at train, for example, when the Brazil road gets on stream and all that goods and services start coming from Brazil, definitely that's going to be a very critical part that you're going to need railroad on.
Wow. Well, I do want to say thank you so much, Mr. Komal Singh, for being here tonight. But before we go, we will ask you for your closing remarks.
Thank you. I want to call on all Guyanese. Guyana have an opportunity of a lifetime. Let us all forget about political beliefs or political affiliation and focus on developing yourself, focus on developing your capacity, focus on building your family, focus on building your wealth individually. It's an opportunity of a lifetime. It is opportunity for every single Guyanese, irrespective of your political affiliation. There's enough opportunity for people beyond the boundaries of Guyana, opportunities that extend way beyond into the entire Caribbean region. And we have seen many, many companies from the Caribbean coming into Guyana, capitalizing on these opportunities. Why shouldn't we, as Guyanese, not take the opportunity and capitalize on it so we can create sustainable development for our own people, for ourselves, and for our future for our children in this country? So once again, thank you very much for allowing me to be on your program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
very much.
you, Dr. Gangaram Das. Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Tara.
Mm.
To all of our viewers, thank you for
Mm.
taking the time to be here with
Um,
us this evening. Until next time, I'm your host, Shamisa Ali, and this is
mm,
the Guyana Dialogue. Good
yeah.
evening, everyone.
And thank you very
Good
much.
evening.
Don't
Thank
go
you,
off a bit.
Shanisha.